do you want to say right now, Ian?
That you're beautiful, everybody. I love you.
And you're beautiful, no matter what they say.
Don't cry, okay? We can't have that at the beginning.
Damn it! And then I turned the corner and I saw them dancing. That's such a great movie.
So how are you?
I'm like I always am these days. I'm tired.
Yeah, I'm tired.
I actually got sleep too. I slept good and I woke up. I'm like, I feel the same. This is great. It's beautiful. This is called getting older, I guess. This is how it goes.
I think this is called finding something you love to do and you're willing to sacrifice your body for it.
Yeah, and it's also people flippantly talk about, oh, you got to treat it like a second job. This is my second job.
Right.
That I pay to do. So
that I pay
I must like doing it, I guess.
Yeah.
Spend all my extra time doing this. So
I've each time we make another episode, I'm like, this is really fun. I like this.
It's really fun, yeah. And the end result, like the last episode, was really good.
Yeah, I like that one.
It's edited well. Everything worked great. There was no tooting on mic, so that was good. We got Ian's bowels under control.
Okay, thank you. I don't know.
You're welcome.
Thank you.
I try.
I appreciate that. So, for all of you listening in, this is the Philomythia podcast, and I'm Ian.
And I'm Eric, and I remembered that if you like our podcast, please like, share, and subscribe.
Yeah.
Please do that.
We hate saying it, by the way. We hate it.
We hate it. It's obligatory. I hate hearing it, but it does really help, and we'd like more people to listen to it. That would be nice. That would be cool.
It'd be fantastic to get like 5 people listening, you know? I'd like that.
Just a good 5.
A good 5.
Baseline. Good 5.
Just 5 people that are like, I like this, and I listen to it intently.
I listen to it when it comes out every week.
I get
good creamy 5. That's all.
So one of our fans, which is actually, I'm going to talk about my sister. Give a shout out to Amy. She the other day when we recorded an episode and we did a bunch of shout outs to people, when she listened to that one, she texted me immediately. She's like, hey, where's my fucking shout out?
We've talked about her like on half the podcast.
I know. And I was like, hey, we talk about you all the time. Stop.
All the time.
She's like, yeah, but I am a fan too. You know,
I didn't get a shout out when the other people got a shout out.
Well, so here you go. Here's a special shout out for you, Amy. Love you.
Love you, Amy. Good job.
So we did, I played in my other campaign last night.
Ooh, yeah. How did that go?
Bro, we went to this place we're playing Curse of Strahd, for those of you that have not heard me talk about it, with my very longtime friend Cody and kind of his table that I've gotten to know now. And they invited me to come play with them. So we're a chunk into Curse of Strahd.
Mm-hmm.
And we literally last night did something that the locals call, the people that have run Curse of Strahd, the TPK Temple.
I've heard about the TPK Temple.
It's called the Amber Temple, is what it is. And
did he kill you all?
Oh my God. We walked in this one way and it was like, oh, this is dangerous. And then we went into the next, one of our players went into the next room and got fucked so hard. And I was like, oh my God, what are we going to do about this? And we keep going. We're all super low. We're hurting. I haven't burned through a lot of my like resources yet, but I am hurting. And I'm like, if I have to burn this last stuff, it's going to
be bad.
Like, then I have like one more that's my shot in the dark. That's it. So basically I have 2 situations left that can help.
So wait, I have a question really quick.
Yeah.
You're in the second room and this is happening?
Yes.
So that's aptly named.
And I won't tell you guys anything, because if you're going to play Curse of Strahd, it's fun. Like finding this out. It's really cool.
And it's I haven't played it, but I've heard of TPK Temple. It's pretty notorious online.
Oh yeah. And then seeing it and like in just that first area, I was like, yeah, no wonder everyone fucking died. So then we finally get situated and everyone's in a room together and we're all alive. And so we're like, let's take a rest. My brain is like, we shouldn't rest in here. Like, we need to keep going. I know we're all fucked right now. This is not the place. If we're going to rest, we should just leave.
You didn't say anything though, did you?
No, I like the way that this group plays. They're very balls to the wall without like being balls to the wall. They're very character oriented and they're fun.
Nice.
So we all went to sleep and I was the first watch. And I did good on my fucking perception. But 3 flame skulls appeared. And if anyone knows anything about flame skulls, they have one, like, I think it's like a 4th level spell slot.
Are those the beholder skulls or flame skulls something different?
We've encountered one or a few in a Conan campaign.
Okay.
They look like little green, like skulls with green flames around them.
Oh, yeah. Okay.
Now you put 3 of those up against a party of like 6 levels, like 5, 6 levels. Those skulls, basically, their first move they'll do is they all cast Fireball.
Oh my God.
All 3 of them.
All in the same like area. Boom, boom, boom.
Yes.
Jesus Christ.
And that's not even like, because we already killed 3 of these earlier. And it was already a fucking shit show. And that's not even to like lean into like what's actually going on in the Amber Temple, besides getting fucked by 3 fireballs right out the gate. Pretty much it's like everyone like is rolling 3 saves and it's like, okay, you see that somebody roll all saves and they're like, all right, half damage for you is 45.
Like we're all dead. And these are like the peons. This is like the initial denizens of
it
of the place.
So we basically wake up because these flame skulls appear. They fuck all of us so hard. Right. And it was pretty much going to be a TPK. But then one of the players goes, "You skipped me." And Cody's like, "What?" He's like, "You skipped my turn." We're like, "Oh," and he's like, "Oh, I did. You actually could have done something." So this character has some sort of, I don't really know what class he is. There's a lot of us that have taken a level in Warlock, though. Like half the party has a level in Warlock.
They're hip to it.
If it comes to like ranged battle, we're good. We're gonna fight you and we're gonna fuck you up because there's like 5 of us that shoot Eldritch Blasts.
Oh my God.
And there's like each one of us has 3 beams. One guy has 6 beams. So if we all are blasting, it's a situation for the enemy.
So it's like 4 times 3 plus 6.
Right.
Jesus.
So it can get really wild. And it's not like they all game like that anyway.
Right. But you can still fuck some shit up.
Right. If we, pardon me, in that scenario. So he gets to take his turn. And what happens is he uses his steel defender. He has like this like little armored character that like is a familiar type thing. And that familiar did something to distract the skulls and it got blasted and we left. And all like it was going to be a TPK because only one person survived all the fireballs and they were going to sneak out because there was a rogue.
Right.
But then when we let the whole thing retcon, all but one person survived and we got him out. And I think we escaped. Is what I want to say happened. And that's where we like ended it.
Nice. So you're like, well, not going back there.
Well, no, I'm 99% sure we're going back in there.
Oh, man.
And because all of us are like, fuck that, I'm going back in there. That was fucked. Now that we know, like, because we did get into like some other rooms. But the emergency was one of the characters was fucking one of them. I'm not shitting you, dude. Almost, I think we had 5 players go unconscious. Like one of them was the same player that would get knocked out, go a round or 2, we'd raise him, he'd get knocked out again.
Low hit points.
Right, because I was only healing people very slightly if they'd get knocked out. Because we had a healer character that was very based on just like they would focus on healing.
Right.
So on my turn, like I would raise somebody from unconsciousness and just give them like 5 hit points with my paladin and then let the healer take care of it.
Right.
But, you know, it was...
C'est la vie.
It was insane. It was a lot of good... Nice. It was a lot of fun.
That's cool. That's a good reason to retcon for sure. If you're like, oh, we skipped your turn. Shit. Let's go back.
Yeah, let's do that.
Oops.
See if you can do something special and save everybody.
Yeah.
So it was really good.
Nice. That's cool. Yeah. Ravenloft Curse of Strahd definitely sounds like fun.
I agree. And, speaking of like flame skulls and stuff, what are we talking about today, Eric?
We are going to talk about monsters in D&D, and specifically monster stat blocks, because they're a little hard to read. If you don't know what you're doing, you might be a new DM or even a player, and you open up the monster manual, you might be like, what? I was ready to play, got my books. I don't know.
What is this?
Yeah, what's happening? So we thought we would break this down, and I've read the beginning of the monster manual, but I read back through it, and I learned some things I don't remember reading. That's good to read the material, especially the introductory stuff in the PHP and the monster manual and the DMG. So we have some examples, but we're going to start with just what Wizards of the Coast and D&D, what is a monster, what is a stat block, that kind of stuff.
What is a monster, Eric?
Let's go with the definition in the monster manual. And most of these are going to be monsters from the monster manual, not say Mordenkainen's Tomb of Foes or Volos, just in case, if you're listening, you don't have access to those books. They have amazing monsters.
Oh yeah, they really do.
But it's another book to buy or purchase or find. So maybe I'd love to do a show just on aberrations, because that's a certain type.
Yeah. But
they deserve their own show.
Oh, they're so weird.
I love aberrations. I use them all the time. So from the monster manual, it's got 2 paragraphs. It says, a monster is defined as any creature that can be interacted with and potentially fought and killed. Even something as harmless as a frog or benevolent as a unicorn is a monster by this definition. So monsters aren't necessarily evil. I think maybe a better term is creature.
I agree.
So it's all the denizens of the world. Monsters kind of purgative by today's standards. Again, because the internet's insane, monster is now controversial. Like, it's a controversial term in certain circles. So whatever. But we're going to use what the manual uses for today. The term also applies to humans, elves, dwarves, and other civilized folk who might be friends or rivals of the player characters. Most monsters that haunt the D&D world, however, are threats, meant to be stopped. Rampaging demons, conniving devils, soul-sucking undead, summoned elementals. The list goes on. So, just
are you a voice actor? Are you
no,
famous?
But I should be. So, it's basically, this is the perspective of D&D, is that all the things you encounter, whether it's NPCs in a city, or it's a dragon in its lair, or it's the koi fish in a pond, those are all considered monsters for the sake of a DM running a game.
Nice. I actually did not know that till just now.
Yeah, I didn't. We make a lot of assumptions about what monsters are or what this is, and if you think about being a publisher of a game, you have to be very specific. If you're designing a game, this is what a monster is. This is what that is. Just for the sake of, you got to put it all in words, Yeah. So monsters in game mechanics are expressed through what's called statistics, or more commonly stat block. But stat block is informal. So if you look in the monster manual, they call them statistics. So what are stat blocks? What are they for? They show the monster statistics in one place. It's a little, maybe 2-column thing. Usually it's just a little block, little square. They give the DM all the info that they need in one place. So as the DM, you need things fast, especially if you're doing random encounters.
Oh yeah, God.
You just need to be able to open a page or search the monster on Roll20 or D&D Beyond, find what you need, and move on with life. They show guidelines for customization. So a lot of what we're going to go through are averages. So the hit points or the alignment, all these things are intended to be changed by the DM. These are just all the monsters. Let me back up. All the monsters in the monster manual are just case studies or examples of what you can throw at your PCs.
Right.
most of them are going to be the most classic examples, like drow or red dragons or goblins, those kind of things. And then they cut down on planning time. It's so you have, if you need to, and we'll talk about this in a second. Let's say you need a monster, you come up with a homebrew monster, but you haven't spent time on the stat block. You can take if they're low level, take a goblin stat block, reskin it. So let's talk about what that means really quick.
What does reskinning mean, Eric? What is that? I don't know what that is.
You don't know what it is? I was going to have you explain it.
I'm a new DM. Tell me.
Reskinning, it's when you take an innocent creature and you grab a knife and you pull their skin.
Holy fuck.
That's not what it is. I think it's really a video game term. So for instance, in let's say Warframe, you might have a gun and you can reskin that gun to make it look different, give it different colors or that kind of thing. In DMing, in D&D, reskinning would be taking a stat block, taking the mechanical personality of let's say an ogre, and making the monster look different, act different, sound different for the PCs, but the mechanics don't change.
Right, okay.
So the hit points are ogre hit points, the attacks and the special abilities don't change. I reskin all the time.
Me too.
So if I need a monster, but I don't want the PCs to know what it is, reskin it so they can't metagame and look it up.
Right.
Especially if Ian's a player, he will look your monsters up. So you better be snappy. Better know what you're doing.
Hey, that's true.
Hey, let me tell you a story.
Let me tell you something. I do that.
It's true.
I try not to metagame. I just want to make sure that it's legit. When I haven't done that to you, but I've never really played in a...
You've never really been a player. Well, you were, but that was different.
Right, and I didn't ever worry about that because...
Right.
Yeah, I have done that, though, and I have definitely caught my fellow DMs making bad choices on the things that they do.
Mm-hmm, for sure.
Only because I metagamed.
Well, and if you only look at the flavor of a monster, like, oh, I really want my party to fight a dragon. You may not consider what the actual mechanics are of a dragon, especially if it's an ancient dragon. It has lair actions. It can do all kinds of stuff. And if you throw the party into that lair, they're going to get smoked unless they're like level 27.
Right.
According to the rules. That doesn't necessarily mean that's what's going to happen, as we both know. But according to the rules, you're sentencing them to TPK, essentially.
Oh, yeah.
And again, TPK is total party kill. So that's when
everyone in the party dies.
They go unconscious,
right.
Which is assumed. If everybody goes unconscious, it is assumed that they're all dead. So interestingly enough, the monster manual starts with, after it defines a monster, it talks about where monsters dwell. So it kind of starts with where they dwell. So really anywhere but dungeons, the Underdark, which the Underdark is like subterranean areas. Especially in Faerûn, there's a huge Underdark world. It's its own thing. It's where the drow live. You have all kinds of creatures that only emerge there, like myconids, which are mushroom people.
Oh, those are great.
They can appear in the wilderness, towns and cities, underwater, and planes of existence. So anywhere else that's not the prime material. So Avernus or Mount Celestia or Sigil from Planescape, wherever, somewhere else. And there's lots of cool, like the writing in the monster manual is really good. So they give you a lot of examples of different things, but we're going to skip over that so we can get to the monsters. So statistics. It always starts with its name and then it has its size. So we'll put some links in there to the actual monsters we talk about, but I'm going to open to a random stat block. So I open to lizard folk, which is on 204 of the monster manual, if you're interested.
Lizard folk. And
they are a medium humanoid, and it's right underneath the title at the very top of the block. And it's cool. This is another thing I didn't realize, is that it actually gives you the space that a certain creature will take up, and this is for tactical reasons. So it goes from tiny to gargantuan. Tiny is 2.5 by 2.5 feet.
Oh, okay, nice.
So it's about half of a 5x5 square.
Hmm.
And then you have small, which is 5x5, and medium, which are 5x5. Most of the creatures that the characters are going to play fill up a 5x5 square. So if you ever play tactically, those little squares on a tactical mat or on Roll20 represent 5x5 feet. And then it just goes up by 5 feet every size. So large is 10x10, huge is 15x15, gargantuan is 20x20 or larger. So if we just jump around, a fire giant is a huge creature. So they take up 15x15 feet. That'd be 3 squares. A kraken or a purple worm would be 20x24. But I feel like gargantuan creatures probably take up way more than that. A lot of the times.
Yeah, it seems like they'd be so big if they're gargantuan.
But again, guidelines. So these are just, here's the basic general rules. If you don't have time to think about it, this is what you can use. You can change any of it if you want.
Right.
So right after size, you have type. And types are what we were just talking about with aberration. So aberration is a type of monster. You have celestials, you have humanoids, you have oozes, undead, all the things we think about with fantasy. And in here it has just a little blurb about each. So let's look at what are aberrations. Aberrations are utterly alien beings. Many of them have innate magical abilities drawn from the creature's alien mind rather than the mystical forces of the world. The quintessential aberrations are aboleths, beholders, mind flayers, and slotty.
Oh.
And then one thing that some monsters have, so for instance, they give we'll use drow, so I just turned a drow, is monsters can have tags. So for instance, if I look at drow, this is on page 128, it says medium humanoid, but then in parentheses, it says elf. So elf is a type of humanoid, or it's got the humanoid tag, because certain magical weapons and certain items will only work against a certain tag.
Oh, right.
So again, everything in the stat block is telling you information that, I don't know about you, Ian, but I take for granted. I don't think about the stat block that way.
Yeah, because just like you said earlier, I reskin all the time, and sometimes when you're not focused on actually studying the stat block, you miss little things that you're like, oh yeah, shit,
I didn't think about that.
I could have ruined their day.
Yeah. We're not going to worry about tags too much. Tags, that name can be a little confusing because now we have hashtags and hyperlinks, and tags mean something. It's just telling you a little more detail about a certain creature. Okay, so then alignment. A monster's alignment provides a clue to its disposition and how it behaves in a role-playing or combat situation. For example, a chaotic evil monster might be difficult to reason with and might attack the characters on sight, whereas a neutral monster might be willing to negotiate. So what's interesting about this, as alignment is falling more and more out of favor, is that the monster manual is basically telling you that the alignment of your monster replaces the monster reaction table that we've talked about, where you roll the 2d6 to decide. The alignment is actually suggesting, hey, if it's chaotic evil, it's going to act a certain way, or that's what we suggest you go with. And then alignment specified in the stat block, blah, blah, blah. Some creatures can have any alignment. In other words, you choose the monster's alignment. So it might say alignment any. Because it's like it can be whatever you want it to be. And then there's some creatures that are unaligned, usually animals. Things that have lower intelligence aren't considered to have alignment because they don't have morality in the same way.
Right.
And that starts to ring some alarm bells in if you're a modern person, when we start getting into morality and that kind of thing. So you can get rid of it, but realize it's there for a reason. So you're going to change the way the mechanics work if you just throw alignment out without a second thought.
I do it all the time.
Yes. And then we have armor class, or AC. So again, it's going to tell you. So I just opened 278. There's a spined devil. Its armor class is 13, and it has the tag natural armor. So this is not something it's wearing. It naturally has this as a creature it is. And then here's where we really get into suggestions, which is hit points. So hit points, if we look at, let's look at something simple. I just turned to 182, and I'm on the Hellhound.
Oh, nice.
Stat block.
It's a good monster.
Yeah, good monster. Has some cool, unique actions and abilities. Its hit points are 45, but then in parentheses it has 7d8 plus 14. So it's telling you the average with the 45, but you could really just roll the 7d8 plus 14 if you wanted to have it be different. You could also give it max hit points if you want. So what's the maximum? You could roll on that 7d8 and then add 14 to it. I find as a DM, I usually don't have time to worry about that. Like, it's not important, so I just take what's there, move on with my life.
Same. Or like a thing that I do, depending on the whatever's happening, I'll look at the hit points, look at the party, and it'll be like, oh, it's got 45 hit points. I'll be like, well, now it's got 65.
Right.
Adding 20 points to a monster that is up against level like 14 characters, all you're really doing is eating an action. You're not going to do much with that. You're just going to eat somebody's action.
So how grueling do you want the combat to be?
Right, exactly.
I hate phrases like this, so I'm prefacing this. I'm going to say something that is not helpful for me, but you want to think about, why are you changing the hit points? That seems very abstract, but I want this to be more grueling. I want this to be a longer combat. I want to stress the players out a little more.
Right.
Up the hit points. That's an easy way. You can have it just be a soak type thing, where you just want them to soak up their attacks. All kinds of reasons to do it. For me, it's always going to be fiction first. So how is this serving the story, etc. This is really cool. They have a little chart that's hit dice by size.
Oh, nice.
If it's huge, you can do a D12. It says the average per hit die, so the average for a D12 is 6.5, for instance. So a lot of the things that new DMs may not know what to do, it's in the intro of the monster manual. And I'm including myself in that. I've read this before, forgot it all. Looking back through, I'm like, oh, that's really helpful. If I have a huge monster, I can just add things. And I'm sure there's some kind of chart where you're probably supposed to add a certain amount of hit die depending upon the CR or the challenge rating.
I bet.
Right?
Yeah.
And then after that, you have the speed. So again, I'm just want to do random blocks. I might not put all these blocks that I'm mentioning in the description, but there'll be a lot that you can look at. And if you just look up D&D 5e stat block, you're going to find all kinds of stuff.
Oh, everything is on there.
Everything in there.
Everything.
So speed is going to be right below hit points, and it's the first kind of row. There's a line right above armor class and a line right below speed that you'll see. For a drow, so I went back to drow, 128 is the page. It's got a speed of 30 feet, and that means it can move 30 feet per round. Or if you're being tactical, it means you can move 6 squares. Boop, boop, boop. Now, speed is the first time we have special types of speed. So a creature might be able to burrow. So they have a burrowing speed.
Oh, right.
If they have wings, they're going to have a fly speed. Monsters like giant spiders have a climbing speed, so they can skitter up walls. And then aquatic creatures or certain magical creatures will have a swim speed. So you might have speed 30 feet and then swim 20 feet.
Right.
Something like that. And there are rules for, you can't just go 30 feet and then go 20. You can only usually go up whatever your max amount is. So if you have walking speed of 30, swimming of 20, you could walk 10 and then swim 20, for instance. So it's equaling out the math.
So I see what you're saying. So the max.
You couldn't move 50 feet.
Right.
You can swim or walk, but it's usually going by the max, whatever your highest movement speed is.
Right.
Now that's going by memory. I could be wrong on that, but that's what I remember reading. And then you have the ability scores. So the ability scores, just like for a character sheet, it's going to give you the basic scores, and it's really nice. It gives you the modifiers. So I'm on page 108 at the adult bronze dragon stat block. So it has a strength of 25, which is a nightmare, and it gets a +7 to its modifier. So if you need to roll a strength check, you roll a d20 plus 7. And again, sometimes you might see certain things like why, like I really like playing with owl bears, and they're really fucking dumb. They've got like an intelligence of 3. So I'm like, I like having owl bears have a little more intelligence. So I might bump it up to 10 or things like that. It's totally fine to do. Just realize there will be consequences or reactions to doing that you can't anticipate.
Right.
You won't be able to foresee. And then if they're proficient in saving throws, it will show that below the stats. So I'm on page 55 for the Balor, which is a type of demon. And he's proficient with strength, constitution, wisdom, and charisma, a whole bunch. So like he gets a plus 14 to his strength saving throw, which is insane.
Yeah, you'd have to
you roll a d20, and then you add 14 to it.
So you'd have to roll so low to fucking fail.
Or have some kind of thing that's good against demons or something, right? Yeah, so if you rolled a 10, that's 24 on a strength saving throw. So you're probably not going to get him through strength, probably.
No, definitely not.
And then I was talking to Ian before started recording. That's you.
That's me.
About it actually, because it doesn't show you a creature's proficiency bonus, which that really bothered me for a long time. But again, I'm in the intro, and there is a proficiency bonus by challenge rating table in here. So for instance, why don't you pick a monster? Ian's got Fitzbin's Treasury of Dragons, but he doesn't have the monster manual, which is why you hear me doing a lot of the speaking right now.
Monster. An eye drake.
So what is its CR or challenge rating?
8.
A creature with a CR of 8 has a plus 3 as its proficiency bonus.
Nice. Here's something interesting, though, that Fizbin's has. It has that. It says that on here.
Oh, it has it in there?
So it says challenge 5, proficiency plus 3.
Oh, see, so they've
updated it.
Fitzbin's is new, and they're going to update the stat blocks, and I think they're going to do that for Mordenkainen's Multiverse of Monsters.
Oh,
they're
nice.
all going to have they updated. So this may change. This is only going by the old, what's soon to be the old monster manual.
Right.
Mordenkainen's looks really cool because they're redoing, I think, over 250 monsters, which is potentially the whole monster manual.
Right.
So it's pretty crazy.
I'm excited.
I just wish you didn't have to buy 3 books to get it.
Yeah.
That's my one complaint.
Yeah.
Because I have the other 2. I don't need them again. But
I don't want
whatever.
those again.
Yeah, I just want the new. And then certain monsters might have skills. So, Ian, I'm going to let you search for monsters in Fitzbin's for this. So if you look at a stat block,
okay,
you just see right below saving throws. They don't all have skills, but some of them might have skills.
Oh, this one does.
Yeah, so what skills does it have?
This one that I'm looking at is a young sapphire dragon.
Oh, beautiful.
And its skills are history plus 7, perception plus 10, persuasion plus 11,
yep,
stealth plus 6.
There you go. So if you had to have the dragon roll a persuasion check or the creature roll a persuasion check, you'd roll it and then add 11 to your roll. So if you rolled a 10 plus 11 equals 21. That's pretty good. That's a good modifier.
Yeah.
And then you get into vulnerabilities, resistances, and immunities, which means like a water drake. I'm just pulling this out of my ass. This may not be correct, but a water drake might be vulnerable to fire, for instance. You won't always see vulnerabilities with monsters. It's not consistent with everything, but certain creatures, like for instance, undead, are notoriously vulnerable to healing spells.
Radiant damage too.
Yeah, radiant damage, those kind of things. Immunities, we kind of talked about this 2 episodes ago, where if you want to challenge your party, make your monsters immune to typical types of damage. Like if you made a monster immune to radiant and force damage,
oh wow,
your players would flip out because they wouldn't know what was happening.
Especially force, because that's like magic missile. So many things are just related to force, and those things hit and usually just do a good damage. Yeah. So there are ways to manipulate damage types, immunities, resistances, those kind of things, to get different results or to challenge your players. After that, we have senses,
And this is like, how far can it see? And just like speed, there are certain special types of senses. So you have normal sight, which usually it won't say because there are rules in the PHB, the Player's Handbook, and the DMG, the Dungeon Master's Guide, about normal sight. But a lot of creatures have things like blind sight. So they can see even if they're blindfolded or they've been magically blinded. So they can
still see.
They can still see.
It's brutal.
It's really brutal. Yeah. You have dark vision, which most player races have. So that means you can basically see in the dark. Tremor sense, which is really cool, which means monsters can sense things through vibration. And then true sight, which means you can see through everything.
Oh, yeah.
Magical darkness doesn't hinder you. You can see invisible creatures. So a lot of epic monsters like dragons will have things like true sight, stuff like that. So another way to challenge your party, if you want if you have a rogue who likes to go invisible, give your monster true sight. They're going to have a bad time.
Yep. And they're going to yell at you because they're like, I'm invisible. And you're like, yeah, I know you are.
You can't do that. You can't do that.
They watched you go invisible, but now I'm invisible. Okay.
And here's another thing that I learned, which just makes me feel really dumb. Right next to their senses, they list the monster's passive perception. Which I'm like, what the fuck? Never noticed that before. So passive perception is very useful. It's really a DM tool. All players have it. They tend to not understand what it's for. Passive perception is for the DM to determine whether creatures or players see or perceive something without having to make a roll. So that way, if you want to keep something secret as a DM, or they might see something, they might not, you have a number that you can specifically refer to. So all monsters have passive perception, which I'm like, that's smart. That's smart. I'm glad that's there. Then next will be languages. And that just tells you what the monster, what languages it understands. If it's a really smart monster, if it has a high intelligence, so let's say its intelligence is 20, it's probably going to have more languages on there.
Oh yeah, for sure.
If it's an older monster like giants, dragons, beholders, illithids, they live for a long time, they might have more languages. And then there's a special type of language comprehension, which is telepathy. So creatures that can speak directly to your mind, so mind flayers or illithids would be the classic example. So they don't speak at all with their mouth appendage thing. They speak directly with their brain thinkies. Brain thinkies.
Brain thinkies.
Yeah, it's a technical term. And then finally we come to the either lauded or maligned, depending upon who you are, the challenge rating. So I'm going to let Ian explain what the challenge rating is. Unless he doesn't want to. He's looking at me like, why are you making me do this?
Well, I mean, I can... Eric's better with the smart stuff. I'm going to just wing it and say what I think it kind of is, like how I interpreted that.
You heard it from Ian, folks. I'm good at the smart stuff.
So, according to what my blasted memory is remembering, is the challenge rating is supposed to give you the idea of what a party of like 4 characters at that level should be able to handle that monster.
That's exactly right.
Sweet.
That's all it is. Yeah.
And so if it says the challenge rating is 10, that means 4 10th level characters should be able to fight that creature. Mm-hmm. Now, from my experience, it's a really trash way of...
It's really inaccurate.
Yeah. I've seen parties of like 5th level characters rip apart 12th challenge ratings.
Yeah. And vice versa. Something that's like, oh, that's pretty okay. That's a CR4. Cool. Just murder the party.
Decimate.
Like they might still get through it, but they have some power in there that you didn't anticipate. Like there was I don't even remember what it's called right now, but basically this thing that's made out of like human body parts and stuff, and when you attack it over a certain amount, it can divide like a cell.
I remember that. Yeah.
So the battle just went on because this thing could keep replicating. It was really crazy, but it wasn't a high CR.
All right.
So,
and you could have, like, again, this has to do with CR.
Mm-hmm.
If you have like, I don't know, 10 goblins, let's just say, mm-hmm. or anything where there's a mass of characters that they can throw spears or they have bows and arrows. if you have every single one of those attack one character, it ends up going real badly for the character, because it's
right.
You know, even if all 10 of them do 4 damage, it's 40 damage. It's devastating.
And something we should talk about once we go through the blocks is the idea of the action economy. And I think we talked about it in like one of the first episodes.
Right.
But it's really important for DMs to think about this as a conceptual framework. But let's put it to the side for now.
Yeah.
And we'll come back to it, because there's some cool stuff with minionizing and what I'm going to call withholding creature actions, which are really, really useful to use as a DM. So for me, and I didn't ever frame it this way until just now, but I think I use the challenge rating as a power rating. Like if it has an 8, I generally know what the power of the creature is going to be, not necessarily how it's going to interact with the players. And that goes back to our kind of white room theorizing.
Oh, for sure. For sure.
So this is in isolation. Here's how powerful it is. Once you put it in the real world, it's really hard to predict how that's going to go. Right?
Yeah, I like that.
That's how I use it, because a lot of times I might be in a rush. I might be planning quickly. I just want something to tell me generally, what is this creature going to do? How powerful is it, without me having to read a bunch? Like,
right.
Okay, 8. Perfect. That'll work. It's not going to obliterate one of my players in the first round of combat, for instance. Where if it's CR 27, yeah, let's not use that.
Yeah, that's big.
That's real big. That's like end of campaign big right there.
That's the CR of the monster I have over here.
Yeah.
It's 27.
Yeah. And that's, I think, the red dragon that I have queued up is CR 27, the ancient red dragon, right?
Right. Mine's the upgrade of that I'm looking at.
Yeah. Speaking of which, this is hilarious, because our friends have started to listen to the podcast, and they're like, you always call us out. Yeah, we're going to call you out again.
Oh, yeah, we're going to call you out. I'm about to call out our old DM here in a minute.
One of our friends in Ian's campaign, which is the Forge campaign, keeps complaining about our elves being teenagers, even though they're around 100.
Oh my God, it's amazing.
And not trusting the homebrew process, which is fine. It's fun to have those debates, but it's like, dude, we've fought ancient dragons in the Conan campaign. An ancient dragon, by definition, is at least 800 years old, and we took them out no problem.
Right.
So if you're talking about how old something is being how effective it is, like, we're already past the uncanny valley on that, my friend, in my opinion. So I was reading that today. I was like, hey, wait a minute. Come on now.
The whole idea of time in relation to creatures and monsters living, like, take, for example, elves. You know, they live to, let's just fucking broad stroke it, 2,000 years.
Right.
When you're 100, that ain't shit. You're nothing.
Right.
To 2,000. Like, you're nowhere.
And think about like a baby giraffe. Like, the way that it develops is not like a human develops. It's a totally different order of magnitude. It's a different thing. We're both mammals, but the giraffe plops out of the womb, stands up, starts running around. Where a human baby needs like 20 years to really be a fully functioning member of its group. So elves, you could say, well, they don't reach maturity because, yeah, they can walk around, they can speak language, but they don't really function correctly until they're like 100.
Right.
Like, it's a different order of thing.
Well, this character keeps saying, I'm 100 years old. Well, dude, no, actually, your character is supposed to be the emotional maturity of the youngest in the party. So 16 years old is what your character's mentally prepared for. So you're probably more like 70.
Right. And that's just, the 16 is just an analogy because we're not actually elves.
Right.
But they're a different creature. They're not humans. This is not human time here, you know?
Yeah, I love it. But I also love that he leans into that, because even though, let's just say it, even though Jerry...
Oh, Jerry, you've been called out, brother.
Even though Jerry talks a lot about that, I choose to just translate that into it's his character. Even though I know it's Jerry, I'm just like, that's your character talking right now.
And I agree, because what do 16-year-olds constantly do? They're like,
Always
an adult. I can drive. I can do this. Like, yep, there you go.
I can read.
I can breed. Oh, okay.
I know magic.
Perfect.
Yep, you're right.
I mean, think how hard it would really be if dragons existed.
Oh my God.
And there's an ancient dragon that's evil, that's been around for 1,000 years. It's like an evil genius. You're not killing that thing.
Oh yeah.
That thing is ruling the world. So this is D&D where they're designed to be defeated. That's, it's designed to move the story along.
They are designed to be defeated.
Speaking of which, we'll get into it, but there are some really cool, like the lair of a red dragon. When I started reading through, I was like, I want to do a campaign around this now. Like, this is so cool.
Red Dragon has a lot of fun.
So awesome. So back to the stat block. The next thing is special traits. Very small, basically is if the creature has innate spell casting abilities. And what that means is certain monsters, I'm just going to call them creatures from now on.
Yeah, I keep wanting to say creature too.
Yeah, and Kobold Press, which is a great third party.
I love their books.
They're so good. We should do an episode on Kobold Press at some point, because
that'd be cool.
I'm very inspired by their monster manuals, and
I'd love to do episodes on all of the like really big companies that are putting things out, like Kobold Press. I'd love to talk about Darrington,
Paizo would be
Paizo.
Great.
I don't know the name of the company yet, but I see their ads a lot where it almost looks like they take kind of very famous Wizards of the Coast things and like crank them up to 1,000.
There could be. I mean, there's Green Ronin, which is highly lauded. They've won a bunch of stuff. They do 5e, but they also do their own stuff.
You may have even said it. What's your buddy, but you're the guy you like, Colville. What's his group called?
That's just MCDM Productions. So Kingdoms and Warfare. By the way, they have a monster section for Kingdoms of Warfare. I forgot about this. There are some really cool monsters in those books.
Are they 5e adaptable?
They are 5e monsters.
Oh, dude, I need to look at it.
Straight up, but they're original, very well thought through monsters. I forgot about this. We're not going to say any more because this is going to go into the Shadow of AO campaign.
Oh, okay, cool.
But just like looking at it, I was like, man, this company just constantly produces phenomenal material.
Colville, everything I've even like glanced at that he's a part of, I'm like, holy shit, that is awesome.
And Colville is a game designer. Like, he worked for big video game companies as a writer. So cool. He comes at everything in D&D from a design standpoint. Like making it fun to use, making it function, and making it be something that people want to use.
Nice.
So that's much different than other companies.
Yeah,
you could say. So yeah, we'll get to that. They're also Free League, which does Symbaroum, and they do After the Flood, which is Tales from the Loop RPG.
Okay.
If listeners remember the Amazon Prime series, which is really cool. It's like old sci-fi, so there's all these old technology, but it's technology that's super advanced for what's actually real. So we'll get to that.
One day.
So also another special trait is psionics. By the way, Wizards, just come out with a psionic class, for God's sakes.
Yeah, come on.
Come on, dude.
What the fuck?
Who cares about the people want to crying about it that don't want in their campaign? Don't put it in your campaign. But psionics should be in D&D. Come on.
If Wizards of the Coast listened to all the crybabies out there, we would get no content.
No content.
We'd get first edition pencil and paper.
Right.
That's what we'd get.
And I think it's Colville. He had a video about, look, if you change a rule, so if the monsters can do something, the players should be able to do it, vice versa. So if the monsters can do psionics, the players should be able to do psionics.
Absolutely.
And yes, I know there's the Psyblade Rogue, and there's some subclasses. Yeah, that's piddles. Come on now.
Right.
Anyways, and then you get to actions in the stat block. So usually actions are like melee and ranged attacks. It has some creature versus target type stuff, and if there might be certain effects on a hit. Oh, it also this arrow deals poison damage, or blah 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 blah. If it misses,
blah 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 blah.
And then if it misses, you can also have things happen. Lots of monsters have multi-attack.
Lots of them.
And I think this is a good time to maybe talk about the action economy and what's going on here. If you just look at a bunch of monsters, it might seem very unfair that monsters have all these multi-attacks. And generally, unless you're min-maxing or you're heavy into fighter, you're not going to get multiple attacks on something. So, Ian, what is the action economy.
The action economy. Well, right now the economy is really in the dumps.
It's really in the dumps.
Actions are real hard right now.
Like a penis. Like a fluffed penis.
No.
Yes. Waggle.
Childhood.
3 inches away from your face.
No.
Childhood.
It's a callback to a prior joke for anyone that actually listens. Action economy to me, and I mean, again, I might word this poorly, but
just word it.
I think that action economy is like players have a certain amount of actions that they'll be able to take.
Mm-hmm.
You have your creatures, and you might have a lot of creatures, and they have their actions that they're going to be able to take. Comparing the two, so you're looking at how much the players can do versus how much the monsters or creatures can do. Mm-hmm. And you're going to start noticing as you're just looking that players can do so much and the monsters can do a lot, but the monsters get more because they need to cause more threat. The players have more, they deal with things, so it's kind of the how much you can do per turn versus, not even versus, that's it. How much you can do per turn.
Yeah.
And how that creates balance within fighting.
That's right. Yeah. And Ian was saying before, let's say you have a party of 4. Let's just say they're tier 2, so they're level 5.
Okay.
And they're facing off against 20 goblins.
Oh, shit.
Goblins are very low level, but let's say each goblin, I think they get 2 attacks.
Oh, that's going to be trouble.
Let's make sure. Let's make sure on that. Goblin, they don't. So
just single
attack, but if you had goblin bosses, they get 2 attacks. That kind of thing.
So you could throw like 3 goblin bosses or 2 in there within the 20, so it's actually right. 18 regular and 2 goblin bosses.
2 goblins. But basically that's 18 actions plus what, 4? Something like that.
So 22. 22?
Yeah.
Math. Fuck.
Math. Lots of math in D&D. Especially if you're doing it all actual analog tabletop.
Oh, brutal.
There's no Roll20 to do your math for you.
All right.
Versus, let's say you have 4 PCs. Let's say 2 of them are fighters.
All right, that's fair.
And they both have action surge, so that's 4 actions plus a wizard and a cleric.
Okay.
So that's what.
Well, that'll only be 4 actions on one of their turns. They can't action surge each turn.
Right, on one of their turns, and they have to rest. But let's just say, for the sake of argument, let's include the action surge just to bump it up a little bit to show how extreme this is. So that would be 6 actions probably.
Right.
So your 6 versus 22, those PCs are probably going to die even though they're in a white room, since they're more powerful. I've heard this is misattributed, but as Churchill has been known, a quote from him is, "Quantity has a quality all its own."
Right.
So the size of your force determines how the battle is going to go for your PCs.
Yeah.
So a lot of these big monsters have multiple actions because you're assuming there's going to be a party of 4. Most of the time I found it's either 3 or it's like 7.
Yeah.
That monster has to deal with, let's say it's a group of 10th level fighters. They can all do 3 attacks each and lots of damage and special attacks, and they have action surge. It has to compete against this insane group of murder hobos, essentially.
Right.
I've heard it said over and over that 5e is not designed for a party to go up against one big monster. That party will murder that monster. So usually you have lair actions, which we'll get to. You'll have minions. You'll have other things that kind of guard the big bad from the party to balance out the action economy. Getting back to the stat block, they have reactions. So reaction is something that a creature or a PC does in reaction to something else. It's usually very quick, and most monsters have these little notations that make no sense if you don't know what it's talking about. So, and here it uses some algebraic terms, so X and Y. So X/day, so maybe it says 3/day, means that the monster could use that 3 times per day.
Right.
If it's recharge, X-Y means, so usually a D6. If it has, let's say a dragon has a breath weapon, it's a recharge on a 5 to 6. Means you have to roll a D6 at the beginning of its turn, or the end, I don't remember, And then it gets to use that breath weapon again on the turn.
Yeah, I think it's at the beginning of its turn it rolls its recharge.
Is it the beginning?
Yeah.
Yeah. So these are just ways to, again, intensify and give a little more randomness to the monster.
Yeah.
And not just have it be, not have it steamroll.
Breath weapon, breath weapon, breath weapon, breath weapon.
Yeah. The PCs are going to have a bad time. And then you might have recharge after a short or long rest, too.
Mm-hmm.
So short rest is an hour, long rest is 8 hours. And then the last part for just a standard stat block is going to be equipment. Most monsters don't have equipment listed besides their armors and weapons. It might be like if you have a battle master, I think they've got like 3 or 4 weapons. They've got all kinds of crazy shit. Which is weird because you would think that D&D would add some gold into the stat blocks for drops. Again, so DMs don't have to do all this work. But that's not the way D&D set up. You can do random table drops and treasure, and we can talk about that another time.
Right.
So that's the basic stat block until we get to legendary creatures.
Legendary actions.
A legendary action. So, Ian, what is a legendary creature?
A creature that's got a legend?
So, here's what the monster manual says. A legendary creature can do things that ordinary creatures can't. See, and even here, we're starting to get to the term creature instead of monster, right?
Right.
It can take special actions outside its turn, and it might exert a magical influence for miles around. So that's another cool thing that it talks about in here that I, as a DM, never think about that I think would be cool to add in more, which is regional effects. So basically, legendary actions can be taken after a PC action. So let's say your ranger shoots 3 arrows, does like what's that spell-like ability they have where they can target a certain creature, Hunter's Mark, and then your red dragon can take one of its legendary actions right at the end of the PC's turn. Suddenly it can go boom, do something devastating. It usually has 3 per turn.
I actually didn't understand what legendary actions were. I didn't understand how they worked until one day I watched, so I love Critical Role. I have a great time. I really wanted to get into season 1, but it's really hard to watch that much content. And it's when it's that old, the quality is really rough.
Quality's not good.
Which, a lot of people, that was their intro to it, and I totally get that. I'm sure it has like a feel to it that's different, and I get that. But I just skipped to the last like 2 or 3 episodes. Said to myself, you are probably going to be able to infer a lot of these characters, like stuff that goes on inside things that you'll be like, oh, okay, that's cool. And I watched the final boss battle of Critical Role, and Mercer would do these legendary actions, and it blew my mind because we'd been playing for a year and a half, 2 years almost, and none of us understood that very well.
Right.
And then I was noticing, oh, he gets to make an action after the player's turn, so it's like he gets multiple turns in a sense.
Or he gets like double the actions.
Yeah, it's crazy. Again, those are his legendary actions. There are other actions that they can get, aren't there, Eric?
Oh yeah. Well, so there's lair actions. So legendary creatures usually have a lair. So the one I was reading about that we'll get into a little bit is the red dragon. I think the lair in the book is an active volcano. So the caldera of an active volcano. Usually they're mountain dwellers and blah, blah, blah. We're not going to worry about the flavor. But here's the actions it can take. So this is at the beginning of its turn, essentially. Magma erupts from a point on the ground the dragon can see within 120 feet of it, creating a 20-foot high, 5-foot radius geyser. Each creature in the geyser must make a DC 15 dexterity saving throw, taking 21, then in parentheses, 6d6, so you could roll for it, fire damage on a failed save, or half as much damage on a successful one.
Nice.
So again, this is like another action. You can do tremor shakes, volcanic gases, or you can make your own up.
And these are things that happen on initiative turns. They happen. Plus you have legendary actions. Plus you have your turn.
Yeah.
And then my favorite thing is probably the next thing you'll talk about.
Maybe. We'll see. So there's lair actions and then there's regional effects is the other thing. And this is the thing I'd love to incorporate more. I've kind of done that in my Shadow of Ao campaign, but just more in terms of flavor. But for instance, Red Dragon, by virtue of there being a legendary creature in a region, that's going to magically alter the surrounding terrain for miles and miles and miles. So for instance, regional effects for a Red Dragon lair. So the region is warped by the dragon's magic, which creates one or more of the following effects. Small earthquakes are common within 6 miles of the dragon's lair.
Oh, nice.
Water sources within 1 mile of the lair are supernaturally warm and tainted by sulfur. Rocky fissures within 1 mile of the dragon's lair form portals to the elemental plane of fire, allowing creatures of elemental fire into the world to dwell nearby. So think how, right there it's suggesting, here's an adventure hook. Local town, they're getting overrun by fire elementals.
Right.
Why? Oh, you can add in cool things. So I love the idea of a regional effects.
Yeah, that's really cool.
Yeah, really, really cool. So I think Ian was thinking more in terms of Mythic.
That's correct.
Yeah. Why don't you break down Mythic? I'm not terribly familiar with Mythic creatures, but they are the next step up in... Go ahead.
Oh, sorry.
No, go ahead.
What I have here is Eric was pulling up the Red Dragon stat block, and I have right here, let me get it.
Did you pull up the Chromatic Great Worm?
That's absolutely what I did.
That's what I have open too.
Because I wanted to, remember how I was like, I'm going to call out our old DM.
Oh, man.
So, the Red Dragon has a great stat block. It's fucking crazy.
Mm-hmm.
And then Fizbins opened up this idea to the Great Worm. The Great Worm, or a mythic creature, they have this like, it's kind of like legendary, but they're one bigger, so it's almost like a unique version of a legendary.
Mm-hmm.
Just to kind of give it a little bit of a flavor. Great Worms come from a situation when they a dragon kind of breaches, it uses, it's some sort of magic and ascends and basically devours other versions of itself from the multiverse, or combines with them to create a more powerful version of the dragon.
It's basically the movie One with Jet Li.
Right.
Where it realizes there's a multiverse and then it finds the alternate versions of itself and takes them out.
Yes.
And it pulls that power into itself and basically becomes a god at a certain point.
And they're crazy. Their stat blocks are unreal, but they're granted mythic actions. And what happens for a mythic action is your dragon, let's say your Chromatic Great Worm, your party somehow kills it. Its mythic situation, what it does, it comes back to life with full health, and now it has another additional action, which would be its mythic action, which is very similar to its actions it's already been using, but now it has more.
Yep.
And it usually is a little bit stronger. Plus, its hit points are back. All of them.
It's like the classic video game thing where you defeat the final boss, and guess what? That's not its final form. Da-da! And the screen starts flashing red and black, and then it comes back in a crazier version. Final Fantasies are notorious.
Oh, yeah. So here's me going to call out he's not our old DM. He still is a DM. He's just not DMing currently. There's a dragon you fight in Storm King's Thunder.
Mm-hmm.
And Fizbins came out right before that. And our DM was looking through Fizbins trying to figure out a Great Worm. And I was like, why? Why are you looking into that?
Why are you doing that?
He's like, I just want to see it. And I was like, bullshit. You're going to try and pull some Great Worm bullshit on us and have us fight a Great Worm rather than the fucking monster we're supposed to be fighting. No, I'm not. I'm not going to do that.
He did.
Yeah, you did. You did.
He did.
We all know it. We saw it. We saw it. We did it. And it didn't. Look, if you would have researched the Great Worm and you would have applied its power to the scenario, it would have been great. But you didn't. You didn't look at it. It was brutal. You just
here's the thing, though. That the dragon we fought felt kind of, I don't know if it's the way the campaign was written or just the way we played it. It felt like an afterthought, like we solved the mystery and it's like, okay, now go do this other thing. There's no reason to have a great worm, which is like, that's your final boss there. That's the end of the campaign, and it's going to be really epic. A lot of players might die.
Right.
You're going to kill it. It's going to come back. I mean, it is a centerpiece monster. It's a centerpiece creature, and he just kind of threw it in. It wasn't even mythic because he didn't use the mythic qualities of the creature.
That's what I'm saying, is if he would have taken the time and like really sketched out this final encounter with this great worm, it could have been insane.
Right.
And again, I'm just saying, bro, you should have just gone with what they built for you, because it would have been easier.
Yeah.
Because I know that this DM, if he had the time to do it, it would have been great.
Right.
But he didn't.
But even if he had, we would have been pissed. We're like, can we just...
Oh, yeah, because we were at the end of our fucking rope with that campaign.
We were done with it.
We were done.
Yeah.
So done.
So done.
Yeah, and I think that's why we've talked about it a little bit. We want a little bit shorter campaigns with this group, like, so we can do some fun and like, all right, let's move on. Let's do something else. Let's have some other fun.
As we get more experience, I think it would be fun to do a published campaign now that we know about things like mythic actions and pacing and planning. And I think it would be a lot funner now just because we all know more how this game is supposed to be run.
Absolutely.
And supposed to be run not necessarily to the rules, but having the table time to understand that. You know?
Absolutely. And I think that's, again, we're just talking about things we've learned. Like with all of the stuff that I even just said, it was a learning experience. Like we didn't know.
Didn't know. Yeah.
We didn't know. So it's all about learning. We just love to call out our friends.
Well, most of them don't listen, and some of them have started, and they're like, hey.
Yeah, they're starting to hit us up. You're like, hey, you said this and this. And we're like, just wait.
It's a good litmus test for who's listening. So
yeah, for sure.
It's entertainment for us.
And I'll tell you this, friends of ours that are listening, the people that don't really know us that listen, they love it. They love it.
Love it.
I feel like that covers monsters at least like the approach to monsters in a general sense.
I wanted to take one monster and just do a case study.
Sure, let's bring him up.
So I'm going to skip, and we're going to go to Slaady because I have a soft spot in my heart for Slaady. We're not going to go through any of this, but if you actually read the history of the monster in the flavor text, basically, before you get to the stat block, some of them have very kludgy kind of piecemeal coolness that D&D has, where you have like, you go into a dungeon, you find out it's an old rocket ship.
Oh, right.
Very kind of pulp fantasy. So Slaady are these giant monster frogs, which seems like, why is that threatening? Well, they're crazy because they were created in the plane of limbo because, what is his name? Primus, who's the overlord of, God, it's the plane of order. It's where Modrons come from.
Oh, I could have told you 20 years ago.
Right. But he made this stone that was supposed to create order, and he threw it out into the universe. He's like, oh, I've solved it. Case closed. And then when it got to Limbo, it did make these pockets so like the Githyanki could, that's where they live, it's in Limbo, and etc. But it had this unintended consequence of spawning this whole race of creature called the Slaad, or the Slaadi, plural. And they can do really crazy stuff. So some of them, when they hit you, they implant eggs into you, which eventually burst out of your chest.
Yeah.
Like an alien, like a xenomorph. Some of them scratch you and you get what's called the chaos phage, so you turn into a Slaad. And also, you can't kill them unless you stab into their head, open it up, and there's a jewel inside, a stone, and then you can control them.
Wow.
So I don't even think you can really kill them. They're very strange and pulpy and amazing. So we're going to look at a red Slaad because they have the cool power where they implant the eggs. So they're an aberration. They're large. They're chaotic neutral. They got an AC 14, which isn't too crazy, and 93 hit points, which if you have 4 or 6 level characters, they're going to clean that up. No problem.
Yeah, that'll take 2 rounds. It'll die.
Here's the cool part, though. So they have magic resistance. So they get advantage on saving throws and against spells and anything magical. And here's where it starts to get complicated. They have regeneration. So they gain 10 hit points at the beginning of every turn. So if this was a first encounter with a Slaad, if I wanted to make an impression, I would up that regeneration so that the characters would see very clearly that this creature, its wounds close up.
Right.
And that kind of thing. I might give it less hit points. Like I might lower the hit points but make the regeneration higher. So if somebody does a really good hit, they're done. Right?
Right.
They get multi-attack.
That's nice.
So they make 3 attacks, 1 with its bite, 2 with its claws. Bite, pretty standard. Melee weapon attack, +6 to hit. Reach is 5 feet. That's one thing we didn't talk about. If it says reach in your melee attack, this is just for monsters. Let's say it says reach 10 feet. It means that it can reach 1 square farther. So instead of just adjacent, so all the squares that are right around its square, it can go 1 square farther. It has suddenly its ability to hit creatures becomes much bigger. Here's where it gets bad. So claw attack, it can make 2 of these every round. Okay, +6 to hit, reach 5 feet, 1 target, blah blah blah. If the target is a humanoid, it must succeed on a DC difficulty class 14 Constitution saving throw or be infected with a disease.
Nice.
A minuscule Slaad egg. So let's say it just successfully hits one. Let's say it hits a cleric who has low constitution. You don't tell the PCs what happened and they kill the Slaad. Oh, we're done. Yeah, we solved that. That was weird. But here's what happens. The humanoid host can carry only 1 Slaad egg to term at a time over 3 months. The egg moves to the chest cavity, gestates, forms a Slaad tadpole. In the 24-hour period before giving birth, the host starts to feel unwell. Its speed is halved and has disadvantage on attack rolls, ability checks, and saving throws. At birth, the tadpole chews its way through the vital organs and out of the host's chest in 1 round, killing the host in the process. Not rendering unconscious.
Killing.
This is a CR5 monster. It seems like, well, it's not too bad. Yeah, read the fine print.
Always be familiar with your monsters.
And if the disease is cured before the tadpole's emergence, the unborn Slaad is disintegrated.
Oh, nice.
But again, the fine print states the players don't know that something's wrong until the day before it hatches.
That's so brutal.
So that might be too late. Yeah, really brutal. So that is a great case study for the CR is not telling you how brutal this monster is going to be.
Right.
And it has lasting effects once it's gone, if it makes even 1 hit. The other thing I wanted to talk about, we're pretty much done, but I like the idea of phased actions and withholding actions, and that is, those aren't technical terms, that's just what I'm calling it, which is if I throw in a heavy monster, I may not just have them do all the stuff that they can do right at the beginning.
Right.
I might have them do basic actions in the first round, add a little in the second round, so on and so forth. Or I might wait till, I kind of stole this from 4th edition, if they get the bloodied condition. So if they go below half, they start doing heavier attacks. They start getting meaner, because that's fun for tension. And also, I like the players to feel stressed out. I don't want them to just get obliterated. And that's a good way to have them fight tougher monsters without it being just a slaughter.
Yeah, for sure. And I think that, just like you're saying, there's a lot of monsters you can find. If you take the time and read through them, you'll find things about monsters you're like, holy shit, I could just use 3 of these rather than try and overwhelm my party with 10 goblins. Maybe just 3 of these, have that one do this, have that one do that, and that's going to hinder my party and make it challenging, but they'll easily wipe up with it, but it will still scare them.
It'll still be intense, and especially if you can attack the character sheet like we've talked about, attack different aspects, that will really freak them out. And the last thing is minions.
Ooh, I love the minions.
We've talked about minions, but if you have a bunch of creatures, so for instance, my party attacked this group of priests in the Monday campaign, the Shadow Vale campaign, and I just intentionally kept their hit points really low, so they would just spend their action just hitting this one priest. They would kill it, so they'd feel really good. It was very movie-like, but it wasn't a huge challenge or anything like that. So you could call it cannon fodder, but I think having some, especially on a big creature, having kind of a buffer is a great way to make your encounters more complex.
Right.
So,
I love it. Yeah. I do.
Yeah.
I have a question for you.
What?
Do you like to poop your pants?
I do.
Nice.
I do very much. I try to once a day.
Once a day?
A good cream in the pants.
Well, on that note, stay sweaty, everybody.
Oh, especially in your butt. Oh, hi. Look at you listening all the way to the end. You know what? I think that deserves a level up. So go ahead. You level up with your bad self. And you know, if you like what we do, please share it with your fellow humans. We love doing this podcast, and we'd love to have more people listening. We have a link tree in the description that links to all the links that are linked therein and forthwith. Also, Jerry did our badass music, and what you hear is only the tip of the iceberg. You can check out all his notes and scales and chords at theplayercharacter.com. Well, that's all for Meow. Remember to roll high and take a point of inspiration. Like, share, subscribe.